Mark Rogers TV talking college football 24/7, 365, and my weekly look at the coaches' top 25 poll. The AP still yet to be released. Of course, the rankings that matter, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, those come out on Tuesday night, and we will look at those as well. At first glance of the top 25 coaches poll, I thought they're getting better. There are some reasonable selections here, some reasonable rankings, 1 through 25. And then I delved a little bit deeper, and it wasn't difficult to find some complete inconsistencies and illogical thought here, as I do each and every week. All right, let's start with the Miami-Clemson comparison. So the first few examples are some judgment calls, the last few mistakes. So we've got Miami at number 6 coming off the big win over Virginia Tech, 28-10. The Hurricanes are 8-0. Clemson is number 4, 2 spots ahead of Miami in the coaches poll at 8-1. Okay, these two teams are starting to play like teams. They're starting to play some common opponents, so we can take some examples here and make some comparisons. First of all, we know that Clemson lost a game. Miami has not lost a game. Let's start there. So, Miami's quality wins, and when I say quality win, I'm not talking about a top 25 win. If you look at top 25 wins out of the teams across America contending for playoff spots, there aren't a whole lot. There aren't many. I'm looking at roughly top 50 to top 60 wins here. Miami has defeated Florida State. From a talent perspective, still an impressive win. Florida State defeating Syracuse to move their record to 3-5 yesterday. Florida State, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Virginia Tech. We've got 3 like opponents there. Clemson. Okay, the like opponents. Clemson wiped out Georgia Tech 42-7. Miami barely got by Georgia Tech. So, check mark in the Clemson box. But after that, we've got like victories against Virginia Tech. They both pretty much manhandled Virginia Tech, didn't completely annihilate them, but controlled the game and marched on to convincing wins. Miami last night 28-10 over the Hokies. Virginia Tech, a quality team in the top 25 right now at number 17 at 7-2. Okay, the other comparison here is that obviously Syracuse beat Clemson and Miami beat Syracuse. They didn't crush them, but they controlled the game and won by a score and were the much better team on that day. So that's the obvious comparison, is that Miami beat Syracuse. Syracuse beat Clemson. Miami has no losses. The Georgia Tech games were different, but they both played similar games against Virginia Tech. Miami should be ranked ahead of Clemson. Okay, they're not. They're 2 spots behind. All right, secondly, Washington continues to get way too much credit from both the AP and the coaches poll. They are number 8 this week. They won another convincing game yesterday against an awful Oregon team, 38-3. So Washington has not beaten anyone. They continue to just go through an awful schedule. Their best win, we could debate that. I think it's probably UCLA, who's 4-5 right now. UCLA's got the worst rushing defense in college football. Washington won that game by about 20 points. That's Washington's best win. Or is it Rutgers? Is Rutgers their best win? And, of course, they still have the bad loss to Arizona State, a marginal team. So Washington is number 8 in the coaches poll. TCU is number 9. Let's look at the Arkansas win for TCU. Is that a good win? Most people would say no, Arkansas is not that good. They just beat Coastal Carolina yesterday. They were lucky to escape by 1 point. But that would be arguably Washington's best win if they beat Arkansas. That's not anything close to TCU's best win. TCU has beaten Texas, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and Kansas State. So they've beaten a number of ranked teams and teams that are close to being ranked. TCU's loss is not against an Arizona State. It's against an Iowa State on the road by 1 score. TCU should be ranked ahead of Washington, and it shouldn't be close. Again, the TCU wins. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, West Virginia, Texas, and Arkansas. All those wins are better than Washington's win over UCLA or Rutgers, and TCU's loss is better than Washington's loss. So that's a joke. Now let's go with some direct comparisons here. Penn State is 7-2. Michigan State 7-2. Okay. Penn State's number 13. Michigan State's number 16. If only these two teams would have played, so we would know who's better. On top of Michigan State's win over Penn State, Michigan State also had to deal with Notre Dame in non-conference play. Notre Dame may be the best team in college football, certainly consensus top 3 team at this point. Penn State played an garbage non-conference schedule. Their toughest game was against Pitt, and Michigan State got the loss against an outstanding Notre Dame team that Penn State didn't have to deal with, and Michigan State beat them head-to-head, but they're still behind in the rankings. That's because we take our preseason perception and we just adjust it a little bit game to game, but we don't allow the game performance, the results, and the performance on the field to dictate where these teams are ranked. And lastly, we've got Iowa. Poor Iowa. They just continue to perform. They took Penn State to the last play of the game. They beat Iowa State, a quality team, on the road. And now they completely crushed Ohio State. So Iowa is ranked, of course. No, they're not. They're 27th in the voting. They're not ranked. Iowa is 6-3. Iowa State is 6-3. They played. Iowa State still is ranked at number 23. We're hanging on to that Oklahoma performance, and it should be and is credited to Iowa State, but they just lost to West Virginia to drop their record to 6-3. Iowa just beat Ohio State to raise its record to 6-3. These two teams played. Iowa should be ranked ahead of Iowa State, not just based on the head-to-head, but that should be number one priority in ranking these teams. But Iowa's got the big win against Ohio State by 31 points. They lost on the last play of the game to Penn State. Sure, they lost to Northwestern, but is that a bad loss? Northwestern 6-3. They lost the game in overtime, and they lost the other game to Michigan State by 1 score. A Michigan State team who is going to be playing for the Big Ten championship, division championship in the East next week. And that kind of draws in the Ohio State comparison as well. I don't know that Iowa should be ranked ahead of Ohio State because the Buckeyes are 7-2 and the Hawkeyes are 6-3. But for Ohio State to drop to number 11, just to number 11, and for Iowa to be unranked is ridiculous. They played. Iowa has a similar record at 6-3 with an impressive out-of-conference win over Iowa State, and they just crushed the Buckeyes by 31 points. Ohio State, in its big non-conference game, was outclassed by Oklahoma 31-16. Let's make all the comparisons we want. Yes, the record should be first and foremost. So Ohio State, I have no issue with the Buckeyes being ranked ahead of Iowa, but it should be by 5 to 8 spots, not number 11 in the country versus unranked Iowa. I guess if Iowa wins the rest of its games and beats, who knows, in a bowl game, the 10th best team in the country, maybe they'll get ranked at that point. All right, Mark Rogers TV looking at the coaches poll top 25. We will wait for the college football playoff selections on Tuesday night and, of course, come back very shortly with our top 25. We welcome your questions and your comments down below. I try to get to as many as possible and enjoy reading the debate, the discussion, the counterpoints that you have between each other. Let's debate and discuss college football. We do it the best way possible right here on Mark Rogers TV.